So if you could only own one background, what color do you think it should be? I'm going to answer that question today, right after the intro. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I got all 5 of these shots on the same background, and I'll break down the lighting for you as well. So for this first image, you can see me deploying my mystery background, which is, you guessed it, gray. So for the full body shot, I was shooting at 1/200th of a second at f5.6 at ISO 100. I've got an Elinchrom ELC 500 in their 150 centimeter octobox located off to the model's left. And our model today, his name is Christian. Please go ahead and check out his Instagram. I'll put his handle up on the screen. So this is the sort of look you would create for a model who needs to expand their portfolio with sort of a basic catalog sort of shot. Every model is going to need a picture like this. If you were to use harder, more dramatic lighting or more dramatic clothing or more dramatic posing, you could also create a cool fashion image with this sort of background. Next, I'm going to show you how to change your backdrop to any color that you can imagine. In this particular instance, I am going to turn it blue. The very first light that I'm setting up is a Mola Rayo, and that's a 15-inch sort of hard reflector, and I'm going to go ahead and gel it blue. The exposure from this light, when metered on his face, metered at f4. Then I'm going to place 2 7-inch reflectors on 2 different lights with blue gels and point those into V-flats. I found in a previous video that I did about how to light a background, which I will link to, that using this V-flat method was the best way to get an evenly lit background. And when I metered these lights striking the backdrop, the exposure was f4. Then to add the sizzle on the steak, I use my NiceFoto SN29 optical snoot with a slit gobo and a yellow gel inside. I had it boomed out there over the camera, coming in just under the Mola Rayo, so things were getting a little bit crowded in there. While I was shooting, I had to sort of keep my left hand positioned, I believe it was my left hand, up there on the light and make sure that this slit coming across his eyes fell in just the right location. So I needed to have the modeling light on to sort of do that. That light, or the light in the NiceFoto, was set to half power, 5.3 on the Elinchrom system, or 250 watt seconds. And when I used my light meter measuring the light falling on his eyes, it metered at 5.6 from that light. I believe that by combining the light from the Mola Rayo and the light from the NiceFoto optical snoot and having those on top of each other resulted in our exposure at f8. That's what we had this camera set to. So those 2 lights together, added together, led to the exposure. Now the reason why I used the blue gels is because I wanted to set the mood and sort of make it look like nighttime. And then I wanted to use the complementary color yellow in order to create a lot of color contrast in the scene. So if you guys enjoy learning from me in these videos, you probably would also like learning from me in person. And soon I'll be teaching workshops in New York, DC, Atlanta, Denver, LA, and back here at my studio in Chicago. So for more information, just go to johngress.com/workshops. So for this next look, I'm going to show you how you can create a gradient on the backdrop, and you can also turn this gray backdrop completely black. So for this look, sort of a film noir, old Hollywood look, I'm going to be shooting at 1/200th of a second at f5.6 at ISO 100. I started off with the Mola Rayo pointed away from the background, and the exposure from this light metered at f8. It was probably too bright, as you can tell that it's overexposing the scene by about 2/3 of a stop, but maybe that's better for black and white because sometimes that contrast can be good. But I'll let you guys be the judge. Now for the other light I have over his, well, behind him over here on his left, I was using a kicker or an edge light, and that just had a standard light with a 7-inch grid reflector. There was no grid in there. And the exposure from that light metered on the back of his neck, metered at f4. Now, in order to create the gradient on the background, I took another light with a 7-inch reflector and I placed it about as close as I could to the backdrop. In this instance, it's probably around 1.5 feet or 45 centimeters from the background. My normal strategy in this situation is to turn the light down all the way and then shoot a series of test pictures in order to figure out whether or not I need to pitch the light up or down to get the gradient in the right spot, or I need to change the brightness to get the look and feeling that I'm going for. Sometimes I will use a grid in the reflector if I want the fall off to be more abrupt and pronounced, but I find that putting it close to the backdrop normally gets the look that I'm going for. You just want this light, when metered on the surface of the backdrop, to be about 1 to maybe 2 or 3 stops brighter than your exposure. In this instance, the light metered at f11, which is 1 2/3 stop brighter than our exposure. Now, in the behind the scenes footage, you also probably saw that there was a light out there on a boom arm pointed at the back of his head. Just know that it isn't turned on in this setup. Now, once I was satisfied with the images that I got with the background light turned on, I went ahead and I turned it off. And now, because none of the light in my setup was lighting the background, it was only lighting the back of his head and his face, the background turned completely black. And that's what happens with a gray background. When you underexpose it, it just gets darker and darker and darker. Now, you don't always have to have your lights pointed away from the background. You could have them pointed at your subject's face, and it could just be that because the distance from your subject to the background is such that the light falls off greatly, let's say around 3 stops darker than your exposure, that background is usually going to go pretty dark, if not black, pretty close to it. So for this fourth look, I'm going to create a dramatic film noir headshot just by reconfiguring the lights a little and adding that hair light that you saw in the previous shot. I will fully break down the lighting in this setup in a future video, which is all about choosing the right focal length when shooting portraits. Now finally, we're going to turn our gray background white. Yes, you can in fact make a gray background white. So for this setup, I'm going to turn around the kicker, then I'm going to remove the hair light and get it out of the way. And next I'm going to place the background light on camera left and bring it up in height, and then turn the power up so that it matches the power of the former kicker. Then with my light meter, I metered the light on the background right in the middle, and I changed the power on the lights until I got f16. Then on camera left, I used a deep silver umbrella, and the reason why is I wanted a very large, punchy light source. Now the light from that umbrella falling on his face metered at f8, and then I set my camera to 1/200th of a second, f8, ISO 100. And because the backdrop was 2 stops overexposed, it looked pretty much white. Now, granted, yes, it's not pure white. It probably would have been pure white if I turned it up 3 stops, but that may have been one mistake that I made during, well, I'm sure I made more mistakes, but that is probably a mistake that I made during the course of this video. So as our bonus tip, I wanted to let you know that if you use a continuous light pointed at the subject's face that doesn't affect the overall end exposure, the reason I say that is because having a bright continuous light and mixing it with flash could cause motion blur. Or if you just have an overall bright environment, perhaps from windows like I have here in my studio, or maybe you're using the modeling light while you're shooting, all of these things will cause the model's eyes or eye pupil to close down, and then you'll see the color of their eye. It will really pop. So looking at these photos here of Christian, you can see that the blue color is really coming out in these shots. Anyway, guys, I hope that all made sense and helped. If you have any questions or comments, just leave those below. And as always, stay safe, have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.